What is going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back again. Nothing's changed. No, just kidding. We're recording episodes in bulk today because of my impending trip to Dallas and a few other projects I've got going on. So thank you for joining me again on this Thursday if you're listening on release day. If not, thank you for joining me whenever. You may be listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you may get your podcast, to episode number 10 of the Sports Card Psychology Podcast. Great to have you aboard. 10 episodes is a small little milestone. We'll take them in stride as we come up on them. Thank you for all your support so far in this series. I've received great feedback, a lot of it through private messages too, not necessarily in the comments that are displayed publicly, but so many people engaging and learning or really challenging their thoughts and beliefs listening to the show. And it is greatly appreciated. That was the intention of the podcast. Today's show is going to be something that I hope everyone out there who collects can relate to. And I think even part of this too could be applicable to different parts of our lives. And that would be kind of the emotional cycle that we go through when set building. And as I said, this can apply to other areas too. So this could be an emotional cycle that you feel when you're tackling any sort of project. Kind of the euphoric start and the anticipation. We've talked about anticipation on this show before, and then kind of moving into completing it, and then what happens after you complete it. So I've been able to follow along the set building journey of many friends over the years. Some never finish their journey. Some take long pauses. Some complete it and then go above and beyond. And that's how I would describe my guest today. When you see his name and you hear his name, you'll know exactly what set he was going after. Fantastic YouTube content creator, Alex of Bowman53. What's going on, Alex? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. This is exciting. You're doing something really cool, something different, and I applaud you for it, man. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate it. Now let's pick your brain apart and see what we can find out about you, shall we? So, as most will probably put two and two together, your name being 50 or Bowman 53, you of course put together the 1953 Bowman set. So how we'll approach the show today, for those of you who are listening to us, is that I want to take you through Alex's journey and then kind of we'll reflect on it and see what we can take away from it as well. So to start off, Alex, how did you get into the 1953 Bowman set? Anyone who's familiar with your channel probably knows the story, but for those who are not, let's get a little background on you here.
Yeah, sure. So I was, like everybody else, I started collecting baseball cards as a kid. It trailed off in my teenage years, and it really was not on the radar for quite a long time. I got back into collecting actually through autographed baseballs. Some of my favorite players started retiring, and in my state of sadness, I guess, I felt the need to try to immortalize the player, and I thought of, I'll get an autographed baseball. It was Jimmy Rollins, one of my favorite players for the Phillies. So I got his autograph and I said, oh, that's really cool. Maybe I'll get a Mike Schmidt autograph. And it went from there. Baseball cards to me, though, were far scarier a prospect because there's just so much. There's modern, there's vintage. And I didn't know anything about sets. I didn't know anything about grading. None of that had existed, obviously, when I was a kid. So I did a lot of research and spent some time just getting familiar with what was out there. And one of the first cards I came across that really just kept coming back to was the Pee Wee Reese card from the 53 set. Purely just because I thought it was gorgeous. I think it's the reason everybody comes back to that card. So I would kind of go off and look at other stuff, but I would always come back to that card. And then I started looking at the other cards in that set, and I had this light bulb go off, which was that when I was a teenager, my dad randomly had given me a bunch of raw cards from that set, and he had just been at a flea market and picked them up. At the time, I wasn't into collecting anymore, so I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool, and honestly just kind of forgot about it. But as soon as I started looking at those cards again, it all kind of came back to me, and it sort of seemed fortuitous. And And so then I just decided I'm gonna go for this set. That's really how it started.
And it definitely escalated from there. You've done an incredible job with
Yeah.
not only collecting the set, and now that you've completed it for some time now. Chronicling your journey and also really reflecting on it and giving the cards continuous life as well, which is all points that we'll get to through this. So, starting a project, inspirations can come to us at any time. Yours was that you happened to be kind of exposed to some of these cards, and the Pee Wee Reese is one that you really go after. I think that's relatable because usually when we're drawn into a project, there's a couple of cards that are really our headliners. They're the ones that make us really go after that set. And the Pee Wee Reese 53 Bowman, regardless if you're interested in the set or not, that's one of those cards that a lot of people just love. Like it's up there among the favorites on the list. Are there any others from the 53 Bowman set that before you started, you were like, yeah, I really want to have this one in my collection?
Not necessarily any one particular card. I think what struck me and the thing that convinced me to finally go for the set as a whole was that every time I looked at one of the cards, I was blown away by how much I responded to it. Whereas with other sets, I might like some cards more than others. With this set, I'm not a father, but it reminded me of like what it must be like to be a parent, where you love all your children to some degree, right? You might like some more than others. You never tell them that, I would guess. But every time I looked at every card in that says like, I like that one, I like that one, and on any given day, you ask me that question, it's going to be a different list of my favorite ones. So that's what struck me, honestly, was that building the set seemed like it would be a fun experience. I wouldn't get tired of it in the long run.
That might be a good sign if you're someone out there who's considering starting a set. If you're at that point in of your journey in set building, that finding that inspiration, and if everything gets you excited, or not just like one or two cards gets you excited, then that might be a good sign. If there's only those couple of headliners, maybe it's not such a good idea. And maybe you fall in love with it as you go about building it. I'm sure that was something for you where you learn things or gain an appreciation through going through it too. So when you first started off, did you have like any kind of hesitations? Like you started picking up the cards, and I know usually we get kind of euphoric when we come out of the gate, guns blazing. We're going for this set. We're picking up a bunch of them. How was that experience for you in the beginning?
Yeah, I would say it was rough because, like I said, my experience level was 0. I hadn't collected anything since I was a kid, way back in the junk wax era. So I had a huge learning curve to deal with. And that included the whole grading process. I decided I wanted to collect this set as a graded set, and that had advantages and disadvantages. For me, initially, the disadvantage was I didn't really understand how to approach the grading system and how to approach what I wanted to do in terms of just the financial requirements of building a set. The first 3 or 4 cards I bought were commons, but they were like 7s and 8s in PSA, and they looked fantastic. But I started to realize, okay, there's no way it's going to take me, decades to finish this set if I try to build it at this level. And that was just me really not knowing what I was doing at all. So I was kind of learning on the job, if you will. And fortunately, I kind of recalibrated my approach pretty quickly. And I would say on average, my average grade range in this set is somewhere around a 5 to 6. And there's some variance with that, but I took a different approach to it, and I also took a different approach between the commons versus the Hall of Famers, which is obviously a big consideration. So there was some learning that I needed to deal with, but fortunately, I caught it before it became a bigger issue.
Yeah, once you get in too deep, it can be very difficult to adjust, or even beyond like just the means of adjusting mentally, like bringing yourself, if you've been doing something a certain way for so long, to then go back on it and kind of rewrite what is extremely challenging. And that pretty much goes for anything in life. But luckily, as you said, you were able to kind of correct it and prioritize what was good for you. Do you think that's something that you could have really done beforehand with more experience before you started the set, saying, okay, this is what I'm going to target in terms of grades. This is the players that I'm going to really look for higher grade examples? Or is that something that only really came through learning?
That's a great question. I think, one of the things that happened eventually was I discovered YouTube. I didn't have a channel when I first started the set. I probably collected at least 10 to 12 cards before I started making YouTube videos. And in the process of making those videos, I met a lot of people on YouTube. And that's where I started to be able to talk about this process. And that was part of the reason I made that initial mistake, is because I didn't have anybody to kind of bounce ideas off of. I didn't have anybody to emulate or to be inspired by. So if anybody's new at collecting cards, there's so many resources that initially I was just totally not aware of. Now it seems kind of obvious that there's so many different resources out there, whether it's a podcast like this or just YouTube channels, Instagram pages, where you can get a sense of what you want to do and maybe learn from others, whether it's learn from their knowledge or learn from mistakes that they've made. I didn't experience that initially, but I certainly benefited from that once I started engaging with different social communities.
I think those are great avenues for a lot of people who may be looking for them for themselves. If we focus on you personally, give me some specifics. Where were the resources specifically that you found that provided you that inspiration, specifically in the beginning of your journey building this set?
I think, one of the things I did was I went on YouTube and I just typed in vintage baseball cards and had no idea if I would find anything at all. And of course I was pleasantly surprised, and I found different channels. Joy Brings It comes to mind, Ray from Philly, Mike Baseball Collector, those back pages, Eric, Nate, definitely Tops 85 401. Those are some of the channels I first found. And this was now 4 years ago. And just realizing that there are other people doing this and they're sharing their experience was inspiring, but also seeing that there were different ways to collect and different priorities. And, sometimes people will just be showing a card, but they'll also kind of casually be dropping some intensely useful knowledge about why they chose that card, or what are the condition issues that this card usually has and why they chose the grade they chose. And, you get a sense of what their priorities are, and, you can agree with that person or disagree with that person. But the point is you're having something to bounce off of. You're not just sort of trying to figure this out in the ether.
Oh yeah, there's so much depth to the videos. I mean, for me personally, I don't have any 1953 Bowman cards in my collection, but I can learn
this chat right now.
I can learn from you and your appreciation for them and what you were looking for specifically. Why did I choose this specific example of this card? What was it about? Was it a price thing where the opportunity struck? Was I able to bundle these together? There's just so many little things that maybe you're not even explicitly saying to try to teach me, but I'm picking up on these things. So I feel like a lot of mail day videos, regardless of what you're collecting, you can really take that away. And that's extremely important. So I totally agree with you there. I don't want to skip right to the end of the set, because there is a very long journey in between. And I think a lot of people overlook that, right? There's the really big fun part of starting it, and there's the really fun part of ending it. But there's a lot of grinding in between, finding those tougher to find cards, finding them at a price that you're comfortable with, finding them in a grade that you want. What were some of the biggest challenges along the way, and maybe some frustrations that you had in building your set?
Yeah, I would say, like any vintage set, this particular set is kind of a walk in the park compared to other sets, primarily because it's so small. It's 160 cards. When you compare that to some other monster sets, that's no challenge. But even with that being said, there are difficult cards to acquire, especially when you give yourself parameters. One of the things I did was I said to myself, I want to collect a set graded. I probably wouldn't do that these days, given what's happened the past few years, I don't think I would be able to build a set the way that I did when I did this. I would probably build this raw. But I decided to build it graded, and I wanted some consistency in terms of the condition. All the cards in the set for me are fairly decently centered, with no surface issues, certainly on the front of the card. And those parameters I knew were going to give me some headaches, because some of the cards are really difficult with either centering or surface issues. And that meant I was going to have to pass on certain cards. So I would say like the first year or so, I was pulling the trigger left and right. There was nothing stopping me. I was able to get, as many cards as I wanted to. And, every time I was on eBay looking for cards, I had the pick of the litter, so to speak. But eventually that slowed down, and the pickings were getting slim. And so as I got towards the end, it got to be where months would go by where I wasn't able to pick up a card. And although it was certainly frustrating, I always reminded myself that I had put these parameters on myself. And the thing that kept me going was that as I was building the set, I was seeing the fruits of my labor, if you will. The more cards I got, the more I could see that my goal was coming to life. And yeah, all these cards looked consistently good, and the centering of them was pretty awesome. And 25, 50, 75 cards in, it's like, hey, this is really looking nice. So even though I wasn't able to pull the trigger as often, I knew that it was worth the wait, because to me, it was something that I was really proud of, that, that goal, as nitpicky as it was really starting to pay off.
That it reminds me of something that I'll touch on here in a moment, but I think you did a good job of extending the longevity of your pickups, and that's why I laughed here at the beginning, because it reminds me of our friend Stove, who put out a video several years ago that has always stuck with me for some reason. And it was called like the final mail day or something, where it was a parody where he had acquired the last card for a set he was working on. You see him going to the mailbox all excited. He gets it in hand, he smiles, and he just tosses it over his shoulder and goes right back to eBay to go looking for the next thing. And that has always stuck with me, because it's painfully relatable, I would say, where we get so excited to get these cards, that you get it in the mail and you're super excited, and then what do? You just go back into the same cycle. But as I said, you did a really good job, and you still do a good job of this too, of really adding life. And it's impossible to replicate that feeling of getting it in hand, I would say, but you can certainly try to recapture it. And with that too, on your channel, if those who watch it go back and watch, you do 53-second showcases for every individual card, and you were doing that along the way as you pick them up. What gave you the idea to do that, and how do you think that impacted your appreciation of the cards?
Yeah. When I first started the channel, that was what the channel was going to be. I had zero intention of actually being on my channel. Like, I wasn't never going to do mail days or go on camera like I am with you right now. Like 4 years ago, that was like the last thing on my mind. I thought this will be a fun little kind of video project. I'll make these individual videos for these cards, and I've got 160 to do. So that'll be a fun little project. And then I'll just tie off the YouTube channel, and that'll be it. That was my original plan. That all fell apart as soon as I started realizing that there was a community. And I'm so glad I did, because this became a huge part of building the set, which I did not anticipate, this whole social interaction. But yeah, it was originally just like, it's supposed to be a fun, creative project. Each card comes in, and I try to find a way to capture the way the card feels to me. And that means like changing the background, of the video, finding an interesting way to display the card, music to go along with it. And for me, that became part of the collecting process. And the other thing that it did, which I would recommend to anybody that's building a set, what's hard about building a set, obviously, is acquiring the cards and finishing it. But I think what's also hard about building a set, or maybe it's what's maybe not fulfilling about building a set, is if you don't stop to take the time to enjoy the cards. I'm a big advocate of enjoying the journey, right? We've all heard that phrase. It's kind of tired, but it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And for me, that was so much the case with doing this, because every card I got, I had this little pattern where I'd get the card, I'd go on Google and I'd research that player and I'd learn about that player. And that was always fascinating. I'm a big, fan of the history of the game. So I enjoyed learning about the player. And then I had to think about, okay, how do I want to make a video for this card? And that would take at least a week or so, maybe a little less. And so every card had this experience that I associate with it. And to me, it sort of helped me get my money's worth, if you will. Like, I really appreciated each card, and I kind of gave it its due time. It wasn't just, okay, cool, I got the card and I put it away and I'm on to the next one. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I knew that I wanted to find a way to kind of slow down and appreciate it, because I knew eventually it was going to be gone and done. And I didn't want to just have it be like, all right, cool, I finished that set, the end. I wanted to try to build an experience out of it. And so that was really the motivation behind it.
You said one thing in there that I think really encapsulates what this episode is all about. And that would be, it's about the journey, not the destination. And that, I feel, is such a huge part of set building, and that anticipation of building up that set. It's overlooked about, how far we've come to this point. It's more so what lies ahead than what we've already come back to. And what you've done, chronicling those for all the reasons you mentioned, I think is a fantastic reason. It's something that I can personally relate to as well. I remember many mail days just tackling various little things or whatever, trying to get certain cards where I would get them in and just immediately, get them cataloged in my spreadsheet and put them away in a box, and never really give them, their time in the spotlight, even,
Right.
Maybe not making a YouTube video, maybe not making an Instagram post, whatever the case may be. And really, what was the point of that? Was I really getting my money's worth out of it? And that was, for the reasons you just said there, I didn't feel that. I felt it was very empty, very shallow, and I wasn't getting the fulfillment out of it. And after that happened enough times, I kind of realized that I'm not really doing this because I'm enjoying it. I'm not getting that, the passion of collecting. It's just checking the boxes and going through the motions, which is, it's terrible to say. I mean, we're doing this for fun. And if you're not having fun, then what is exactly the point? Nobody says that, you have to complete this set, Alex. Like, if you wanted to abandon it, you could have if you wanted to,
Right.
But you didn't. So I totally relate to that point. And in a sense too, you said that it was like sometimes months at a time before you would add a new card to your set. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, we all like to get cards in the mail. I know people who, if they don't get any cards in the mail on a certain day, it's kind of like an odd occasion for them. It's become that way for me personally. Sundays feel weird because there's no mail delivery for cards. So with you, when you're doing it like that, though, it makes each one special, right? Like, you have something to look forward to, and you're only looking forward to one specific card, even if, maybe it's a common, maybe it's a really big one from the set. That's one of those things where you get it in greater appreciation because it's more of a special event as it goes along. And sometimes it can be a special event too, if it is, of course, one of the big cards in the set. So you mentioned the Pee Wee Reese. Tell me about your acquisition of that specific card, because I know that that's one of the highlight cards, if not the highlight card of the set.
Yeah. This is going to sound a little masochistic, but at some point, you would think that would have been the first card I got because it was the card that I was most excited about, but I held off on it. Initially, I held off on it because I wasn't seeing a copy that I liked. I was constantly checking eBay, just not seeing the one that I wanted in terms of condition. And I was probably being even tougher in terms of pulling the trigger on that card that I might have been on others. And then at a certain point, I was maybe 20, 25 cards into building the set. And I had this idea, what if I don't get this card until I complete the set? Let it be the last card I get. And I really liked that idea for some reason. I guess I wanted to torture myself. I think it was because, one, I knew it wasn't going to be a difficult card to get. It's a pricey card. It's certainly a way pricier now than it was when I got it. But it was by no means like an astronomical card at the time. So and it's not a short print or anything like that. So I know I can get it. And I just liked the idea that it would be that card that I would finish on, as opposed to some random card that didn't have any specific meaning to me. I mean, I think there is something fun about the card being somewhat random. But I just liked the idea that it was the Reese card to finish on, because it was like, the cherry on the sundae sort of thing. And that was another way to kind of keep me motivated. It's like, I'm going to get that Reese card. I'm going to get that Reese card. So when I finally got it, it really made finishing it much more of an event for me. And, it just kind of felt like a nice way to finish it all off.
I see that a lot with people who tackle various projects, even if it's not necessarily a set, even though this is what this episode is focused on. I know personally, seeing different player collectors where if they have a certain milestone in the number of cards they have, they want like card number 1,000 or number 2,000, whatever, to be something special. Some just pick any random card because then it becomes special to them because of the milestone. I've had it happen to me personally both ways. I see people doing like set registries where they do the exact same thing. They hold off something really special to the end, and it kind of makes it, climbing that proverbial mountaintop, so to speak, and getting to the top of it there. In leading up to it too, I would imagine that the anticipation really builds, because it becomes more of a realization that you're going to kind of capture that, cherry on top, as you put it, card. And I remember when you were nearing the end of your set on your YouTube videos, a lot of people commenting like, "Almost there, Alex. You're, so excited for you to finish this up." So people are feeding into this too to get you to that point there. Was it the most exciting for you in those kind of final few cards to know that, you still had some left to tackle, or where was kind of your peak excitement when building this thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the peak excitement was, but I will say that as it was winding down, it was strange, because I was both anticipating the finish and getting the Pee Wee card, but at the same time, because I was pulling the trigger so infrequently towards the end, it gave me a lot of time to really think about the fact that I was going to be done soon. And so while I was wrapping it up, I was really racking my brain about what was next. I don't know if you want to get into that yet or not, but that's really what was on my mind, was what's going to happen when this is over.
I think that's a perfect segue to get right into it. So once you got the Reese card, I don't want to understate that, because that is a huge card that anyone would add to their collection too. So when you completed the set, that is a monumental occasion, and we don't need to talk about it too much at length. I'm sure anyone listening to this will know how much that meant to you. And I think anyone who followed your journey back then too knows how much it meant, just because we got to kind of come along for the ride with it. But in that time of reflection and looking ahead, I'm not sure that everyone necessarily has that luxury. What were some of the thoughts kind of going through your mind in terms of what's next? Did you really ever have a clear pathway in terms of what you're going to do next, or was it something that just kind of developed from there?
Yeah, I would say that maybe the last 3 months of finishing the 53 set, I had a new idea every day as to what would happen. Just to give you an idea of how all over the place I was, there was a period of time where I thought, I'm not going to collect anymore. This would be it. As crazy as that sounds, I would just build that set and stop, or at least I would stop and do some reflecting to see what would be next, but I wouldn't just continue. I even thought about stopping the YouTube channel. And I thought about collecting 1952 tops. So like, hey, I'll do another set. I even bought some 54 Bowman, not with the intention of building the set, but just sort of like, what would it be like to cherry pick a few cards, but not build a set? I had never done that, which sounds crazy. But when I built the 53 set, that was all I ever got. I wasn't getting anything else. So it was sort of like me trying on, different ideas. Like, what would it be like? And it's sort of like an identity crisis as a collector. Like, if I'm not a set builder, who am I? And so I thought about it a lot. I talked to other people about it. And I really started leaning in certain directions, but it took me a while to get to a place where I felt comfortable with moving forward as a collector. I knew there was still more for me to enjoy as a collector. It wasn't once and done with this set. I think the reason I reacted that way was because it was so much of my focus. I had no idea how I would approach collecting if it wasn't a set. So that took some real thinking.
It was really a huge part of your identity, in a sense too. I mean, when you're devoting this much time and effort into building this set and showcasing it in the manner that you did, like that, your channel name is Bowman53. I mean, if that doesn't say how intertwined you are with this set and associated with it, I mean, even to this day, I can't see a card from that set without thinking about it. That's how closely your identity has been tied, which is a blessing and a curse. And I've struggled with that identity myself too.
Right. Yeah. Miguel.
I don't know. Exactly. That's my thing. That's why I'm so closely tied. But to get ourselves labeled and put ourselves in these boxes, like Alex is the set collector. He's the guy who put together the Bowman 53 set, or I am the Miguel Cabrera collector. We really limit ourselves and kind of, it's nice to have like those identities and people know what you like, but at the same time, we're much more deep than that. There's a lot of depth to our hobby interests and what we appreciate and enjoy. Those labels can sometimes be hard to shed and hard to tackle too. So I think definitely would add a challenge in your kind of post set building days. And one of the big focal points of this episode I wanted to talk about today was post project blues, because I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to if they have finished the set, regardless of what point you may be at in your journey. Even if you're currently working on one, you'll probably feel this at some point. But it's this idea that when you devote so much time and energy into something, and then that is taken away, all of a sudden, all this time and energy and focus that you have is no longer supplying the ego. And in a sense, you kind of lose a part of yourself. You lose a part of, your purpose, your drive, and I'm making it sound very dark and deep. And if we're talking about pictures of men on cardboard.
Right.
But it is true. I mean, you put a lot of time into this, and especially with the videos that you did, you put more time into building this set and chronicling it than I think most people have. In fact, it is, for me, the most I've seen someone pay a close attention to detail. And really, I think what you did is a great poster child, I guess, of how to build a set. I don't want to say like the right way, because you can do it any way you want, but a good way, we'll put it that way, or even a great way. I'll venture to say that. But you did things to really extend the longevity of your set. I don't want to spoil them there. I'll have you talk about them. What did you do to really just keep bringing your set to life through not only your content, but for yourself as well?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that, JT. It means a lot to hear it. One of the things that I initially started making videos for, like the very first video I made was a 53-second video. Almost 4 years ago to the day. I looked it up right before we started. And the whole point for me of making videos initially was just to find a way to visually express how excited I am about these cards. I mean, it's as simple as that. And sometimes words can't do it justice. I'd rather I'd rather me not say anything and just look at the card. That speaks louder than anything I could say. And so that's been my primary motivation with my channel, is to try to find ways to enjoy the cards. And one of the things I feel gives that set for me extra life is finding different ways to appreciate it. So, for example, one of the series that I haven't quite finished, but it's nearly finished, which I've been doing for the past, I guess, year or year and a half, maybe, is this team sets series, where I look at each team from that set and I look at all those cards together. And tied into that is whatever was happening in the 53 season. Some people kind of refer to them as like mini documentaries. They're not necessarily meant to be documentaries, but just sort of me looking up stuff about the team and what I thought was interesting that they were doing that year. And for me, it's the thing that initially happened, as I said before, looking up the players and seeing their connection to 50s baseball really added value for me to those cards, because I started to learn about the players, the connections that they had to important moments in the game. And that really raised the value of the set overall for me. And the team set series did the same, because now I'm looking at the whole, the baseball season and how these players and teams did. I'm literally right now finishing up a video that I will hopefully post in the next few days, which is a video I've wanted to make for a long time. It's basically looking at all the locations that are featured in the set. So Yankee Stadium, the Polo Grounds, Ebbets Field, spring training photographs. There's just an endless number of ways to look at the cards. And I know for some people, and rightly so, it's like, Alex, just leave it alone. Like, just put the set away. And I certainly don't want to monopolize the set on YouTube. I've slowed down a lot when it comes to showing Bowman cards, but for me, it's a way to continue to appreciate the set and keep it fresh. And it's also a way for me to get to share it, because I love getting to share my enthusiasm for it. And it takes me back to when I first found YouTube. Joey brings it. Joey doesn't make videos as much nowadays, but his infectious like love for the set is part of what got me started. And so I like to think that, I'm not as good as Joey at sharing his passion, but I'd like to think that I'm trying to pass that on too to whoever else out there might love these cards or get into it.
I think your passion shows. I mean, you don't have to have the charisma of Joey brings it to show your appreciation. That's something that many of us can't live up to, just because he brings it, as his name would
Yes,
suggest.
he does.
Yeah, I pulled it up too. Your acquisition of the Pee Wee Reese card happened, or you put out the video at least, on December 11th, 2019, which feels like ages ago.
Yeah.
It's called Mail Day: The End. If anyone wants to go check it out, I'll have a link to Alex's channel down below. But if you're looking for that specific video, that's the one where he actually acquires the final card. Now he does you have a few different like completion type videos there. So there's a few of them to check out if you're wanting to see the finished project. And your display case as well that comes later on down the line is something that people can check out too if you want to see the project in its entirety. But I would say that'd be kind of like reading a book, but just reading the last 30 pages of it after spark noting the rest of it.
Sure.
Like, go back and watch the beginning, because it's worth checking it out. Even though you're not watching it in real time now, it is really cool. And if you're someone who is looking for inspiration, as you said there, you were inspired by Joey Briggs and various YouTubers, you're going to be inspired. We joke, don't eBay and YouTube, because you're going to see something cool and you're going to go spend your money on something and make those snap of the finger decisions. So, but I think this is good inspiration there. I'm really glad that you said, you're hoping to pass that along to, and I think you do a really good job of that with your card room, little live chats that you have, where you bring on fellow people to share your voice. You are a leader. You've we got to watch your channel grow and see your journey along. And now that you've kind of can look at it retrospectively, you can help others along on their journey as well. Not that you're not still growing and still learning and still adding to, but it feels like you're giving others that platform too to kind of share and encourage them as well. What kind of inspired you to kind of do those? Because that's really become a really large part of your channel in recent times. And what do you think the impact has been from that?
Yeah, it's funny. I honestly don't think about it too much. And if I'm being honest with you, the whole reason that I do those live sessions is not because I have any agenda or anything else. It's literally just me saying, okay, I got a little bit of free time. I'm going to hit live and see what happens. I don't have guests. If there's no formula or plan, which is really not me. I think like, what you're doing here on your podcast is inspiring. But I'm not necessarily good at that. And the live session is really me just saying, okay, let's just see what happens. And I do it primarily because in the past we've had YouTubers go live. Nate will do it sometimes, and he still does. Other YouTubers will go live from time to time. But one of the things that I loved when I first started my channel was when YouTubers would go live, being able to go into those live chats and meet each other. It's one thing to make a channel and comment on somebody else's videos and have them comment on yours, but there's something about the live connection that changes things. It's a little bit more casual. You get a sense of people's personalities a little bit better, I think. And I think that, to me, it's like, I think our community needs stuff like that. So it's not about me. Like, honestly, if somebody else was doing a live channel more frequently, I probably would do it less. Like John Mangini does it. James Elite Hunters does it. And I'm sure I'm going to forget some others that do. And I'm so glad that they do. I'm only doing it really because I feel like we need more of that. And I enjoy it. I'd much rather be in the chat, honestly, than be on camera. But I'm happy to do it because it gets people talking. It's fun to go on eBay and look up cards. And sometimes people will come into the StreamYard and chat for a while. And that's great, because to me, that's what I found when I started my channel that I was so surprised by, was that, hey, there's other people out there that are into the same things but also have different perspectives. And that's what makes the hobby much more fun than if I was just doing it on my own.
It's fun to listen to for people like me too. Like, I'm shipping in the background, I could just throw that on and listen to you guys talk about cards. And people who watch this might think like, is that something that like keeps your interest? Like, yeah, I get distracted by what I'm doing because I want to join in on the conversation. Like, no, get it, keep doing what you're doing, just listen and observe.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
I totally miss that too, because I feel like we're in an age now where there's a lot of influencers out there, and that's not a knock on anyone out there who's created content within the last few years who's just entered the game. But the community aspect of it is really a huge part of what enhances the collecting experience. A lot of people who go to the National will tell you it's about the people more
Yeah.
than the cards, and it's that hanging out and chatting. That's what a lot of people really look forward to. I can go look at cards on eBay all day.
Right.
I more so care about the people, because you can't always get that and recreate that too. So I think it's great that you have that platform to kind of share ideas. And it's not, I'll put this out there for anyone who's not familiar with it. It's not like you're just like chronicling your 53 Bowman set and talking about it with a live panel to discuss all the little intricacies. Like, there's so much depth that you have added to this, where, it's very coming full circle in my, from an outsider's perspective, because as you said, you started your channel as just these 53-second shorts where you weren't going to appear on camera, you weren't going to say anything, and that was going to be it. But now it's really evolved into something way beyond that. And like I said, kind of branching out of your identity as just this guy who built the 53 Bowman set, and expanding your role, I guess, in the hobby, or even what people have come to learn more about you as an individual rather than you as Bowman53. So
Right.
it's really cool to see that. I normally ask people for advice, but I'm going to ask a little bit more of you because I want 3 pieces of advice from you.
Okay.
So to kind of wrap up the show here, I want to have advice for people who are looking to build a set, people who are in the midst of building a set, and those who have completed a set. If you could give one piece of advice to each of those categories, what would it be from your personal experience?
Wow. If you're looking to build a set, take your time and make sure that you pick something that you can see yourself completing. And that's really difficult to do because how could you possibly forecast that? Things can change in life. Your interests can change. Your circumstances can change, and those can throw things off. But to the extent that you can anticipate it, do I really care about this set? There's got to be something about the set that draws you to it. And you have to be all in about it. There's a lot of people that don't collect sets because they look at the set as a collection of a few Hall of Famers and then a bunch of other cards. And if you look at it like that, you're not going to be able to build the set and really enjoy it. You have to look at it as a unified experience. Like when I look at the 53 set, I don't look at it as like the Mantle and the Pee Wee Reese and the Usual and then a bunch of other cards. To me, I look at it as one thing. And that's what made it so fun to collect, was to see that completed idea as a unified thing, as opposed to like individual cards. And that's really like, maybe that's a little too existential, but hey, this is your podcast, right? The psychological approach, right? So I would say that, like, pick something that you're really into, something that means something to you. And that's going to, keep you going for the long run. If you're in the middle of the set, one thing that I would do is make sure that you're appreciating what you've got. I think a lot of people will start to get burned out on it for good reason. It's frustrating. The end feels a long way away. Maybe there's a bunch of cards that you're just not having any luck finding. When you're in that mindset, what's probably a good idea is to get what you've got out and look at it again. And maybe if you don't already have some social media outlet, make an Instagram, which is really easy to do, or make a YouTube channel and share what you've got with other people. Because I can tell you, I was motivated to finish this set no matter what. But YouTube over time became so intertwined with me finishing the set that I was really inspired and motivated by others. Not because they wanted me to finish it, but because I was really enjoying the friendships that I was making. And it became part of building that set. And people would help and they would be excited for me. And we would talk about the players and the cards and stuff. And boy, that became such a huge part of it. So stopping and looking what you've got and also sharing it with others, I think helps. And then, finishing the set, if you can pick a fun card to finish on, or like you said, maybe it's a random card and that kind of elevates that card and becomes special. But yeah, to me, there's nothing in card collecting that comes anywhere near the euphoria of finishing a set. I know that sounds really intense, but it's so true. Like, I know I'll never top how excited I was when I finished this set. I don't know that I'm not going to build a set anytime soon. Maybe sometime in the future I'll build another set, but I knew if I tried to build another set after this one, it would pale in comparison. I just wanted to kind of let this be its own thing. I love, I'm collecting pre-war, I'm collecting, vintage stuff now, and I'm excited about what I get, but nothing matches how exciting it is to finish a set. So enjoy it. But but then like do a lot of thinking and talk to other people about what's next, because you gotta have a goal, right? I mean, we all say that you gotta have goals moving forward, because goals help you have focus, but they also give you new opportunities for new projects and new destinations that you're excited to go to. So kind of as you're finishing something up, be thinking about what's next.
It's very sound advice. You made me stop to think there on your first point of encompassing the set as a whole rather than just a few key cards and then the rest is bulk. That's something I've never really considered before. Um, Maybe I have in the back of my head in my own building endeavors, but it made me think there. I think a lot of people as well. That's some really sound advice, as well as the other parts too. If you're in the process of building a set, you know, Alex has been through it. A lot of the emotions you're feeling, he's probably felt them at some point too. How they manifest themselves is going to be different depending on the person, but yeah, some extremely sound advice there. So if people want to go back and rewatch your journey or watch for the first time your journey, they can go find your channel Bowman53, and then also see what you've done outside of the 53 Bowman set as well, which Alex makes incredibly well produced content. If you're watching my videos, you're going to think that mine is like a found footage Blair Witch style channel when you start watching the quality that Alex puts into his videos. So make sure you go check out his channel and the links down below. Where else are you available if people want to go follow along your hobby journey?
Yeah, I recently just started an Instagram. Finally, I bit the bullet. The Instagram name I think is like Alex Bowman53 or something like that. You'll see it's the same logo as I've got on YouTube. So I'm excited about that. I've only made a couple posts, but it's cool to see other folks on there, and it's a different way to share cards. So yeah, I'm on Instagram as well.
Sweet. Make sure you guys go check out Alex there. I want to thank him so much for joining me on this show today. I thought it was incredibly thought provoking, got me challenging my own beliefs at times too. And I hopefully those of you listening kind of took away the same things. If you want to get in contact with him, make sure you reach out through YouTube or Instagram or wherever else you can find him as well. I'm sure he would be a great mentor to you if you have more questions that we didn't really touch on in today's set building episode, because there's quite a bit more that we could dive into. And if you want to see us revisit this again or something more specific, we could certainly look into that. So leave your suggestions in the comments section down below on the YouTube channel, or if there's another topic you want to hear me discuss or any suggestions for guests, open ears. There is plenty that we can dive into on this show. So thank you very much for that. If you want to catch any previous episodes of the Sports Card Psychology podcast, they are conveniently all compiled into a YouTube playlist. If you want to watch it there, you can also find them categorized on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you may get your podcasts. If you care to, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well to keep up with all of my ongoings as well on Twitter and Instagram. All the links in the show notes down below. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back next Thursday with a solo episode. Going to be doing some more baseball talk. We're going to talk about the lockouts. I've got a few things that I really want to dive in there. So I'll be sure to see you next week. Until then, take care, stay safe, be kind.